So working on our Phantom 3 engine rebuilding project, where I like to continue on from this point after we have the engine mounted onto the stand and ready to come apart, I like to first take the intake manifold off. So just give you a little view of how it's constructed. Removing the intake manifold opens up the V so we can get a lot of these tubing out, as well as the ignition conduit wires, and just opens things up that lead into there that need to be removed. And so you can see how it's constructed of 4 different separate arms, and we have nuts and bolts coming in from all sorts of different angles, so we can see. So, and it's pretty busy inside the V of the engine. So we'll get moving along here. So a good starting point are these pipes. So we're going to get those off and out of the way. Oh, a little too small. That aside, because I'll be using it soon. I do want to give a little warning when you have a union such as this. A lot of times you need to use a thin spanner to hold this union from spinning, because if that spins loose, then you can damage the pipe. Let me get that worked loose. That one worked loose. That one. Let's see. So we're going to grab a thin spanner. I think that's a little too small. This fella. So now we hold it that way and undo. So we get our little pipes off, and what these do is they allow coolant to circulate in between this section, usually referred to as a hot spot. So you have your intake fuel, your air and your gas mixture going down through this chamber, and then the outer part of the chamber, which is separate, has coolant going through that. And so what that does is that just helps to even out the temperature of the gases as they go into the intake manifold. If the temperatures aren't regulated, you could have the carburetor could actually develop ice on it and freeze, Earlier cars had exhaust that would go through a similar section, and what they were doing was they were heating the fuel air mixture before it went into the combustion chamber, sort of a preheating chamber. By the Phantom 3, we had an increase in compression ratio, and we had better fuels, a little bit better fuels. So heating that wasn't quite as important, but they still wanted to keep that temperature evened out as much as possible. So now that we have that out of the way, I'm going to move on to just getting a couple of these little items out of the way. We'll flip that linkage off. What I like to do with linkage assemblies is to take them off as in big sections as possible instead of taking them all in little bits. And I normally like to keep parts when they initially come off in these metal colander type baskets so that they can be washed quickly to get the oil residue and stuff off before they get sorted into bags and bins and such. This was, of course, somebody's made up fuel line, not an original. And go get that out of the way. And of course we get a phone call in the middle of things.
Call from Brooke David. Call from Brooke David.
But we're just gonna continue on here. Okay, so now you have some of these pipes that are connecting in at the bottom of the center section of the intake manifold. See if we can get a view of them here. Actually, maybe what I'll do is I'll take the... So we can see the pipes connecting down bottom there. We'll just give a little view there so people can get a better idea what they're faced with. So what makes things a little bit easier a lot of times, or at least what I like to do, is to take, sorry about this, some of these intake manifold arms off, some of these fellows, so we can reach in there a little easier. We'll get these guys off. And as you will see, these are, as typical Rolls-Royce fashion, these are special bolts. They're of course British standard, but the intake manifolds are distinctly different from nearly every other bolt that's on the car. So they're special. And we got a lot of them to undo. And some of them, getting a socket on is very difficult, if not impossible. Those will use a wrench. They're quarter BSF. Usually not terribly difficult to remove, but I suppose that there may be some that have corrosion issues. That might be a different story. So in the ones that are a little bit even more difficult to get out, I like the right angle wrench for them. And for them, you really have no other option but to wrench them out. Using a socket isn't gonna really get you anywhere. And just to give a little background on the intake manifold design of the Phantom 3, initially the engine was designed to use 3 SU, or 3 or 4 maybe, SU carburetors that nestled down nicely into the V of the engine. The company, just prior to production, decided that that was just not going to be a good option for manufacturing. It was going to make it very difficult for manufacturing and also very difficult for servicing. If there was carburetor fuel issues, you had to do an awful lot of work. And also to change the inner bank of spark plugs, a lot of that assembly had to come off. So they redevised to the setup that we see now, and they used a carburetor made by Zenith under license from Stromberg. So it's a Stromberg Zenith dual throat downdraft carburetor with an accelerator pump, and it's really quite a good carburetor. I would imagine that they probably did some sort of performance testing or dynamometer testing to compare carburation performance values, and probably found that they were very much the same. I've only seen pictures, drawn pictures. I haven't seen any actual photographs. I don't know if any exist of the SU carburetor setup. And looking at it in the drawings, it looks like it was really a neat design. It really neatened up the appearance since the carburetors were down in very nicely, and then you had a big air cleaner sitting on top. And it would probably have provided a little lower appearance. The engine wouldn't seem to sit up quite as high. Maybe you could have put a lower bonnet on. but that was really regulated from the height of the radiator and the firewall. And of course, when you have multiple carburetors like that, they have to be synchronized. You don't want one carburetor doing all the work and leaning out banks on certain cylinders and richening certain other ones. So the tuning and the adjustment and the maintenance of them was probably just more than what they felt anybody should be able to handle. So, and there's what one of the special bolts looks like. It's got a little bit of a taller head, and again, you put it in there for rinse. We'll continue working this one out. Working on an engine with an engine on an engine stand like this is not too terribly bad. There are times you have to take the intake manifold off with the engine in the car, and that can be a little bit more of a backbreaker, but it can be done. I also have done, on rare instances, taken one cylinder head off. So that's another thing that can be done with this design. If you ever had a reason to do that, perhaps a head gasket failure or an issue with a valve, again, you can just take one cylinder head off. And we'll just make sure we're in good shape here and get these nuts and bolts off. This one's going to need a wrench the whole way. Okay. You will notice on this engine that there's a lot of polished aluminum, and a lot of these metal steel fasteners have been chrome plated. It was special ordered that way from new. The first owner, or the original owner, spent 68 pounds extra for that feature. I've never known that to be a feature on any other Phantom 3 engine. This may be the only one, but I'm sure when new, and it will look like that again, it was quite a stunning feature. I'm gonna see if I can break that one loose. Get a socket onto these, a very long extension. And might even go this route. These smaller 1/4-inch drive are a little thinner wall. Sometimes you can get those a little closer. And of course these are different length bolts. I don't usually bother to mark them because it's hard to have any marking that's going to stay on there, but as you go back together it'll be obvious what length goes where. These brackets are extra supports for the air cleaner. Normally found on ABC series cars. D series cars, they omitted that bracket and it's not on there. And I should also state that this is an ABC series engine, specifically an A series, AZ. When they went to D series, they changed the intake manifold changed a little in design. I don't think the intake manifolding will interchange from D series to ABC series, but the primary change was in the water rail. They simplified that much so, and in doing that they also made a big change in the cylinder head design. So I got all the nuts and bolts out. It's still stuck on there, so I might need a little encouragement. Which we can certainly give it. There it goes. So one arm off. And we'll go ahead and get this other side arm off. Which again will open up a lot of room for getting some of that plumbing out of the V. So now, for whatever reason, we can get a ratchet on at least that one. This one, no, I don't want to force it. Okay, we'll go back to our quarter here. Okay. Can't quite get there. That's going to be a right angle wrench. It's nice when you break them loose and then you can take them out with your fingers, but of course the ones that are difficult to get to aren't doing that for me. Get these guys out of the way. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. I should also add that this is a snap-on 7/16 American size wrench that has been just a little bit ground out to fit the British standard hex of a 1/4 inch bolt. Which works very well. I don't know if there are any British standard fine wrenches that are right angle. I'm sure that they probably were at some point in time, but I'm sure that they're very difficult to get. And of course this isn't going to require the use of a wrench the whole way out. Well, maybe not. Okay, we got that guy loose. Also, when it comes to ratchets, I prefer one that has a swiveling head over a fixed head most of the time. Got a little tight again. One of the other ones. You know, you can position it in all sorts of different ways to make life a lot easier. Another reason one would have to take the intake manifolding off is to replace the inner bank of spark plug wires. I have heard of people doing it with the intake manifold in place, but I think it would take just as long to do it that way as it would just to take the intake manifold off and bite the bullet. If you are to replace all of the ignition wires on a Phantom 3, you're going to need about a 100-foot roll of wire, and you're going to use nearly all of it, if not all of it, by the time you're done. And you have to remember you have 24 spark plugs. Okay. One bolt, and then I can take that arm off. Maybe if I have just a little shorter extension, I can use a ratchet. The other thing I will note is that, at least I know for sure on the ABC series, that these arms, these intake arm sections, all are specific to where they belong. They don't swap around the different ones. So, again, there's no real need to mark those. Off that goes. And you can see how it really opens things up. So now we can undo those plumbing fittings. Excuse me for just a moment while I take a picture. So again, opening this up when the engine is out really opens things up. But if the engine is in the car still, then it's probably easiest to remove the front sections. But that doesn't give you quite the same amount of open space that you have, because you still have your distributors in place and some of the other things coming in the way. So that's why I like to handle an engine that's out from the back in that area. Now to remove the center connection, there's a special bolt there. The hex is an undersize and probably I think it's 1BA hex, but the bolt itself is 1/4 inch. But I find that a 10mm fits and works the best. And again, it's a special bolt. You have one on either side. It's a little flange. In this case, I probably could have removed the center section with this still attached, since at one time this this line had been cut. But we'll do it this way just to show people how it is. And this is again a water connection, so the hot water will be pumped into, actually it's going to be coming directly from the water pump, so it'd be cool water, I suppose, and it'd be pumping right in through this section and then into the water rails to go back into the radiator. There we go. All right. There's that last bolt, so that means the center section should pop off. Like so. So I'll just give you a little view of it while I have it off. This is where those aluminum balls are. And that is for the coolant that goes through there. There she is. Doesn't seem to be rotten through or cracked or anything anywhere, but we'll check her out. Okay, this arm should come off. And some really good gaskets. Okay.
Call
Phone call real quick.
caller.
So again, this is what the special bolt looks like. As you can see, the hex is just a little undersized. I guess they were being generous to give you a little extra room. We'll see what it's like getting this fellow out of the way. Might want to just pop his fuel line off first. Let's see. This one I might be able to get a socket on. I have a 10mm socket just for the occasion. And I need to have the ratchet going the right way. Okay. And the other one. Okay, now we get see if I remember which size the other ones are. So now the other ones are gasoline overflow connections. So there's a fitting that these flange nuts screw onto, and that fitting has an aluminum ball in it. So the idea is that when the engine's running, the vacuum sucks the ball up and seals that that tube off. But when the engine's not running, if your carburetor is flooding or if there's excess fuel inside the intake manifolding, then it will then it'll drain out, and then the drain goes right onto the ground. And again, you want to make sure with these unions that they're not turning and damaging this line. Would not be a fun line to have to remake. I can tell with a lot of these fittings that they had old gas that had dried up in them, and the varnish residue sort of makes it feel like you're undoing a fitting that has molasses in it or something. You want to be as careful as you can with these lines, because if you damage them, as I said before, and have to remake them, it can be quite a job bending tubing to the exact sharp bends that they were able to achieve back in the day. Back at the time, I guess they had special jigs and fixtures for doing it. Go. There's that one. Okay, so now the 3 connections have been undone at the bottom of the intake manifold center section. I think I'm just going to go a little further. I can feel that that one is pretty stuck. So maybe what I'll do, since this line has been cut, is to remove the fuel filter in case that wants to come out with it. As you can see, where this line's been cut, it's held down by the fuel filter fitting. So I'll start by taking this guy off, which again could have been done a step or two earlier, maybe to give me a little bit more room. So got some gas dripping, and then we can take this fellow off. The secret fuel filter that a lot of people miss, don't realize needs to be serviced. Smell the gas permeating around. Okay. gas on the hand there. Not exactly what I wanted. Still got to get a nut. Went down in there. We're going to retrieve it. And I might just go ahead and remove this linkage section. In this case, this whole engine's coming apart for rebuilding, so. And you're not going to get that out any other way. Whoops. Well, I guess that came off easily enough. The reason why this was cut on this particular car is because somebody had installed air conditioning on it, and they used that line for an air conditioning. Size are these? So I'm gonna get this guy off. Put these guys in with fuel filter. Oh, got a lot of little hardware pieces to pick up. Set that aside. Okay. So now with that out of the way, we should be able to work this fella out. And now it comes. Okay. There's a connection here, so you can take it apart in two pieces. But I tend to leave that connected because there's always a possibility you'll twist up the line. Alright, so we will continue on here. We got a lot more bolts and so forth and so on to take out. I'll break them loose first. Okay. I see a nickel down there. Since all this is going to be polished again, I have to be careful not to put too many nicks and gouges in these pieces, otherwise it's going to be that much harder to get them nicely polished. Okay. Don't like that one. Not gonna get easily on that one. So these are gonna be right angle wrench specials. Okay, so I'm going to take a little break for lunch, and we will resume afterwards. Okay, so we're going to continue on with the intake manifold removal. So we don't have much more to go with it. Again, this is one of these bolts that's gonna be tight coming out the whole time. So I think we got it out enough to get a ratchet on there. No, we don't. So we will continue. Okay, and of course this one's our right angle wrench type. I got one more bolt after this one, and then this arm will come off. broken loose. I can almost guarantee there's no easy way to get a socket onto that one. Technically, I could take out the ones that hold the arm to the center section and take the center section out of the way, but we'll just get them all out and take them out piece by piece. Not an easy place to get your hand into. All right. I will undo the ones holding the center section and take the center section out of the way. Yeah, it would have been nice if they just gave you a little bit more room to be able to get sockets and things on a lot of these, but I guess that'd take a lot of the fun out of it. I do encounter at times these bolts will have slots cut in them that you can use a screwdriver to use to turn them out once they've been broken loose. Okay. And of course, going back together when things are freshly painted or polished or whatever the case is a completely different story. You have to be so much more careful. There it is. There's one bolt holding in the center section now. So we have this last section of intake manifold to take off. Loosened up the bolts. See if we can get them all out. See, there's a little bit of corrosion on them. Okay. Okay. And off it is. All right, so now we have the intake manifold completely off and the V is open. And we can move on to the next item, which the next thing I like to do at this point is remove the ignition wiring. So we will continue that in just a moment. Okay, so now we're going to take off the ignition wiring. So let me unplug the ends that lead to the spark plug, and as you can see, they're the original type, which are very hard to come by, so be very careful with them if you have them and they're in good shape. Okay. All right. And those are already done because the spark plugs are out. Then we will undo the nuts to hold them in place. I believe they're 1BA. And I normally use a 10mm socket on those. Oh, 2BA. Let's see if a 2BA fits. Yes. Oh, no. Seems to be an undersized hex 2BA. Got a wrench socket for that. Okay. We'll undo these. Huh. There we go. I did just remember there is a section of tubing that needs to come out. So we'll get that next. So, and we normally refer to this as the S-pipe because it's in an S shape. And this is an oil pipe. So this is the oil feed for the rocker shafts. So we undo that portion, and then we have to do, this is going to be too big. Nope. These hollow bolts.
Call from wireless caller. Call from wireless caller.
Hello, Dennis and Jane Motors. I'm doing good. How are you? Okay, so we have the bolts out for the S-pipe, so we can work that out as such. Then we can see if these want to lift out. And they do. So, take a quick picture. All right. And then we can kind of just see where they're connected up at. So we gotta undo these guys. Ooh. 1/4 inch BSF. I want to swap over to a socket. I'm using an extension too, so I'm not scratching up things. All right. Another fastener that's give me a little bit of a struggle the whole way off. Okay. So these guys come off. Normally these are off by now because you have the bracket that goes across here, or the lock plate I should say, that goes across here for locking the fan adjustment. But in this case that was missing. So we get that, and then we have these guys here, which will require a screwdriver. Okay, and while we're at it, we might as well disconnect these fellas. Okay, little top hat. Swing that off. There's that one. And this one's a little bit more difficult to get at. Let's see if we can... Ooh. Distributor doesn't want to turn. There we go. Might have to... Yeah, we could probably leave that in place for the time being. So at this point in time, we can take out the inner bank wire. Like so. Ooh. So that assembly comes out as such. Now we can do the outer bank wiring. Got that ready, we got that ready. And push this off while we're at it. Okay. And then the outer. Yeah, 1/4 inch here. 1/4 inch here. These are a bit loose to begin with. And again, we want to be careful with these because these nice original ends are in really good shape and they're very difficult to get. Side, and then we have these right here. They kind of look like 10 millimeter. I mean, should say 1BA. Can't quite get a socket in there. And we'll go to the wrench. A lot of times these have slots cut in them, but in this case they don't.
Concerto in A minor, Opus 82 of Alexander Glazunov on WRTI. The violin played by Vadim Guzman with Andrew Litton leading the Bergen Philharmonic.
This is
Okay.
WRTI, 90.1 FM Philadelphia, 91.3 WRTI.
This guy.
Atlantic City, 90.7 WRTL FM Lebanon, Lancaster, 91.1 WRTY Jackson Township, Mount Pocono, 91.7 WJAZ Somerville, Harrisburg, 91.7 WRTX Dover, and 89.3 WRTJ Coatesville, a broadcast service of Temple University. Also available in HD and on the WRTI app.
Good afternoon, I'm Kevin Gordon. 67 degrees. What a beautiful day. It will be sunny for the rest of the afternoon and then clear skies overnight, a low about 45. And then sunny again tomorrow, a high about 60. It's 66 in Harrisburg, in Atlantic City 68, Philadelphia 67 degrees. It's Samuel Barber's birthday. He was born on this date in Westchester, PA in 1810. He won 2 Pulitzer Prizes in the Prix de Rome, and his music is still extremely popular. Here's his string quartet number 11.
Okay.
Performance by the Dean.
Oops. So now I'm pretty sure we can work these out. And I will be sure once I've done it. I believe I've done it before. Let's find out. Or we might just as well lift out the distributors. And I think that's what I'm going to do. So we'll get the distributors out of the way. They gotta come out sooner or later anyway. And the one that's the fun to get to is right in here. Of course, it's not too bad when the engine's not in the car. Okay. Once those 3 are out, the wiring is off, the linkages are disconnected, you just lift the distributor straight out. Here, lock washer's falling off. We'll set this guy aside, and it'll more than likely drip a little oil. Now I got to get the 3 that are out on this one. hand. Just barely. Yeah. There we go. And now we can lift out this distributor. And we'll just let those balance for a second. Make sure they're going to be safe because you don't want to break a cap or. So we'll just put this guy down here. And then we can take off the outer bank. All right. There we go. So we might as well get these oil pipes out of the road. Take another picture. So moving along now, the next step that I like to do is to see about taking the water rails off. They can be quite difficult to come off. I already was able to remove this top section, and I was also able to loosen up and remove these. I like to remove these, loosen and remove these while everything is still on the engine and engine stand, because then you have it's a lot easier to hold. Trying to loosen this on a loose cylinder head, the head tries to roll and move around on you, so forth and so on. So doing it in this position is something that I think is makes sense. So we'll take off these nuts here and see what we can do. And this is something where you want to hope luck is on your side. These can really become very corroded and stuck on. Oh, see, there's a stud that broke without any effort at all. And that one feels like it's getting a little stiff, so we'll use a little WD. See, that helps things any. Okay, that one's off. These also tend to be pretty fragile pieces too, so you want to be very, very careful not to damage them any more than they may have already been damaged from corrosion. So I'm going to introduce a little more WD-40 around these studs, around the one that broke, and then we're going to see what the willingness is like of these to come off. And this is quite surprising. I actually did not think it's going to be that easy. So yeah, lucky me. Again, these can be terrible to remove. So, and I'll just talk about these for a minute. If you look, you'll see that there's an aluminum tube that goes down each of those, and that's what the stud goes through. And a lot of times that aluminum tube will corrode through, and then you have coolant that's attacking the steel, like this one has some, and that bimetal corrosion will glue them on there tighter than can be. So since I got lucky on that side, let's see about getting this side. Okay. Certainly don't like the looks of this nut. And a weird size. We'll do it. Oh, and that guy comes off nicely. Probably from the heat that I had already introduced to it. Now we turn that compressor off. Okay. Well, let's see how this goes over here. All right. Oop. Okay. Where'd that nut go that I dropped? Well, we'll come back to that since I'm running a video. So, we'll do a little more WD on these. See the corrosion developed around that one. This one's a little more resistant. Just give it a little taps just to see if it wants to help things out a little. Okay. I think we might need to get a little more involved here. Let's see what this does. Alright, so we have some looseness there. We're just going to keep wiggling it. That way things will keep wiggling loose. And the WD-40 will keep wiggling down, and we have things wiggling over here. Lucky, lucky. Let's see what we got here. Ah, we got wiggle there. Okay. I still feel a little bit of resistance on this side, but it's going. We're going to be nice to it. The nicer we are to it now, the easier our lives are going to be. You can see a little bit of that rust, and that's what's the holdup. We're going to use a little more WD on that one. Okay. See what that wants to do. It's feeling good. Okay. 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 All right. At this point in time, I can wiggle them off. All right. something that can take days at times has actually cooperated, and that's very nice. So we'll see how these other sections work out. Just wanted to point out the hidden nut. Now we're going to take off a bunch of nuts in through here. I'm not a big one to use a driver, but sometimes it's worth it. Got a little adapter on here. Where did my adapter go? Huh. Maybe I'll need to use this guy. Okay. This means made a change there. And this is the portion where the corrosion is the problem, because this is where the coolant goes through on the other side of that chamber. These other sections don't have any coolant going through them, so they don't tend to be the issue. And again, these are pretty fragile too, even when they're haven't been attacked by corrosion. Of course, you don't have any of this to deal with on a D series. These are, of course, I think a 1BA size. Which is a difficult nut to come by. Oh, I got a whole stud there. We also have coolant that goes through this section. So again, corrosion can have developed in there. There's a couple I gotta go back to. That one. And that guy's interesting. So we'll need to get something a little better for that. Get a little WD-40 going here. We're going to put that there, 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 So I'm going to start getting some work down in here. Okay. See what we got. So somebody made a little change there. This guy. Now we have the nut off. We'll probably put a little more on there. It looks like somebody made a change here too. And of course this one's been bathed in coolant. So these can be a problem. I like to use a brass nut on these. Ooh. Ah. I'll have to get that out at another time. Just make sure that these guys are gonna... Alright, just about ready to see what this is gonna do. Just make another check that I got all the nuts. And then we're going to do a little gentle prying. Okay, that feels like a good place. And yeah, she's still feeling tight on there. Let's just see. We might have to allow the WD-40 to work its way. Ooh, that one's moving. Work its way down. Ah, so maybe it's just gasket. We'll do that. Just double check. Make sure you got all these nuts off. None hiding. That guy out of the way. Okay. Yeah. So may need to try a little, let's see if working back from here will give any wiggle to... Sometimes as you wiggle it along, it'll help you out. Still like to see more. Okay. Well, I think I'm going to have to introduce a little bit of a wedge in there. I'm usually pretty reluctant to do this, but let's see what that does. Feeling pretty tight. So, I think the next thing to do is heat. Put some expansion on it. Might have gotten away with propane, but let's hit it with some acetylene. Okay. Let's hit it with some heat to expand things a little bit. Okay. Let's see if that has any desired effect. Where did the large screwdriver go on me? Huh. Let's see here. Oh, got movement. Got movement. Yes. Okay. Very, very good. Aha. Oh, we got a lot of hot surfaces here. Don't want to get burned. Okay. How about that? Where's that? No, why don't we go ahead and get that guy out? So, we'll get that guy out of the way there. And go on to the next one. Give this a spin about. All right, same thing other side. See what we got.
Symphony Espanol on WRTO.
So when I'm looking at it, I see this little corrosion line there. I wonder, did it work its way down from somewhere, or where did, what's the story with that? Hopefully not bad news. And let's not forget the secret one.
The syncopated clock. Music of Leroy Anderson on WRTI. Frederick Fennell led the Eastman Rochester Fox Orchestra. 65 degrees, still bumpy out there. Clear skies overnight, in the upper 30s, and sunny tomorrow. With a high in the
While I'm working this off, I'm going to give these a little
66. Harrisburg is at 63.
something to help matters.
Degrees in Philadelphia.
Your classical and jazz station. This is member-supported WRTI 90.1 FM Philadelphia, 91.3 WRTQ Ocean City Atlantic City, 90.7 WRTL Effort 11 in Lancaster, 91.1 WRTY Jackson Township Mount Pocono,
Okay.
91.7 WJAC Summerdale Harrisburg, 91.7 WRTX Dover, and 89.3 WRTJ Cokesville, the broadcast service of Temple University, also available in HD.
And here we go. Get this guy off. See if we get this lucky on this side. This side looks like it's in a little bit better shape corrosion wise, and we don't have any funny studs.
NPR's Kerry Johnson explained senators have more pointed questions for another Justice Department nominee.
Benita Gupta has been nominated to serve as Associate Attorney General, third in line at the Justice Department. Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee pressed Gupta about her record of investigating troubled police departments and her statements on controversial social issues.
Okay.
She apologized for sometimes coarse rhetoric on Twitter.
A little bit of corrosion in there. Let's give that a good soaking.
Gupta says she
Now, let's see what we got on this side.
decriminalization of the illegal drugs. Meanwhile, lawmakers called Lisa
Ha-ha.
Moore nominee for Deputy Attorney General, a mainstream choice and mostly offered praise for her career in government service.
Over on this side.
NPR News, Washington.
Democrats and Republicans are welcoming a Biden administration order giving temporary protected status to Venezuelans in the U.S. NPR's Greg Allen reports it allows Venezuelans who fled their home country to live and work legally in the U.S.
The order affects more than 300,000 Venezuelans who came to the U.S. fleeing political and economic turmoil under the regime
Okay.
of Maduro. It's
So
drawn
maybe this one on the rear might need the heat.
Marco Rubio and Rick Scott. Carlos Vecchio, the U.S.
Okay.
Guaidó, recognized by the U.S. as Venezuela's interim president, says Venezuelans don't want to be here in the U.S.
We have been forced to leave Venezuela. We have been forced to leave Venezuela due to the political situation, the humanitarian crisis created by nothing. We are running away from hunger, violence, political persecution.
The order allows Venezuelans to remain and work in the U.S. for 18 months. Greg Allen, NPR News, Miami.
Climate envoy John Kerry is making the first major overseas trip by a high-ranking Biden official coming to Europe for talks on increasing environmental protection efforts. There are shows reports from Brussels where European Union officials will roll out the welcome mat.
The EU is thrilled President Biden is taking a leading role in trying to reduce climate change, rejoining the 2015 Paris Climate Accord that former
And I think
dumped. John Kerry says he's trying to raise
we're going to go ahead with some
global warming to the 1
heat on that area.
Celsius increase the Paris Climate Agreement pledge. He warns that without urgent action,
Since things have worked out so well so far,
U.S. officials say they'll
I'm
make
not
an
going to take
additional
chances.
900,000 doses of coronavirus vaccines available this week. Many of the doses of vaccines made by Pfizer and Moderna going to states and pharmacy partners. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said states and territories will receive 15.8 million doses of two-shot vaccines, up from 15.2 million a week ago. A mixed close for Wall Street. The Dow was down up just 30 points. The NASDAQ rose more than that. This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from Atlassian, makers of collaboration software like Jira and Trello. 83% of Fortune 500 companies use Atlassian to help teams stay agile, aligned, and connected. More at Atlassian.com. 4 minutes after 5.
Got a little too close there. Where am I? There it is.
Today's 2011 fantasy adventure starring Asa Butterfield, Sacha Baron Cohen, and Ben Kingsley. Hugo. Here is music of Howard Shore. It's The Thief, Evan Jolly, the City of Prague Philharmonic.
Ah! Let's see if I did get it hot enough. Blow those away. Let's see here. I'd like a little more heat on there, I think. Oh, I think I am getting a little movement. Like that. Okay, so it's probably down here that it's stuck. A little wiggle over here yet. Yeah. Let's see, wiggle there. Wiggle there. Maybe we're going. Maybe it's that guy. Give that a little WD-40. See if that helps. Okay. I think heat. May need to come back on the scene here. Yeah, let's do that. A little more warming and that'll go. Hate that. There we go.
the insidious cloud seven miles of musical highest floor. That is this tweet from Hugo. The buying support from USDI. Now on fewer supplies, the world premiere of Distributor conversation instinct. The realistic score of mutual dialogue between two influential artists. And discover how Christine's technique will be out of determine how to shape his abstract structural skill. The full U.S. presentation features 4 techniques and respected dedication of each artist's work. The tickets are rare and safely distributed. Buying foundation, that's great.
We are now at the stage to be able to remove the rocker covers, the rocker shaft assemblies, and the cylinder head. So that's the stage we're at. We'll get a start on this one. Just so people are aware, most Phantom 3 engines are, or you could say V12, maybe including the aircraft engines, I suppose, are usually designated as A bank and B bank. A bank being on the driver's side of a right-hand drive car, Phantom 3, and B bank being over here, passenger side. So this engine has all its original dome, rocker cover nuts, 1/4 inch BSF. And as you can tell, there's quite a few of them. So I think in this instance, it doesn't hurt much to use a driver, as long as they're not on overly tight and the driver injures them. There they go. The lock washers are all in place. Let's see if we can jiggle this up a little bit. There's a little bit of a lip there. Sometimes you can give it a little tap and it'll lift. A blunted chisel sometimes is good for just catching enough of this to lift it. I should also note, since we were talking about the A and B sides of the cylinder heads, that there's markings a lot of times. In this case you have A, and then you have the engine number V38F, and then on this side you have the B. Here's all the lock washers. That's okay because we're going to replace them all. Lock washers are a one-time use item. Always replace them. We now have the rocker shafts exposed. Just show you a little bit in here. I don't know what all this stuff is. I've never seen that before. So this engine is an ABC configuration engine. When they went to D series, the cylinder heads and the rocker mechanism changed at D series. They simplified this a lot more, and they also simplified the water rail assembly and intake manifold. So, so you have a lot more mechanism in here because originally the design was for it to have hydraulic lash adjusters, and that's these devices here. And the idea of that was oil pressure was to push these little pistons that are inside of there and take up the lash that would be at the rocker tip where it contacts the valve stem. And in doing that, you didn't have any clutter of any valve noise, which you normally wouldn't have on the other engines anyway too much. So you wouldn't have that, and also you would have the camshaft would be working. You wouldn't have that little bit of lash. That would be more movement that you could have the valve opening. All right. So now I see the gasket is a bit stuck down, so maybe we'll just leave that there for now. So we'll start with this this section of rockers.
Call from Allentown, PA. Call from Allentown, PA.
These are 5/16 British standard nuts. Normally I like to break them loose. And then go back through each one, giving a turn each, because you have some valves that are compressed, the springs are compressed, and you want to just allow them to release their tension on their own without bending the shaft too much. And once you have that tension released, you can just take them off. So we'll take the nuts off. And then under here are special washers. You'll see they're domed on one side and flat on the other. I also see something that is not an unusual sight, that some of these lash adjusting arms, this is an eccentric. So what would happen is, since the pivot isn't rotating on a circle, it's on an offset circle, so that's what allows to take up the lash. And a lot of times these pieces will break, and I see that's been the case with some of these because they've been brazed. There's the rocker assembly. We always check these surfaces for wear. This one doesn't seem to have too much. Also note here that you'll see markings on a lot of this stuff. This one you'll see a B, marking for the B side, and then on these you'll see the numbers. So that'll tell you where they go back in at. So at this stage, there's no need for you to do any of the marking if you do see the original marks there. And then you have the pedestals. These are the devices that would originally house the hydraulic piston. And I should note that a lot of the ABC cars were converted to solid, meaning that they took the hydraulic piston out and they put in a plunger that doesn't move anymore, and then they changed the oil supply coming to the top. So you no longer have that hydraulic mechanism lash adjuster. You just have what would be considered a solid a camshaft. And when they did that conversion back, they would change the spring arrangement to so that they would do away with the double spring that they would have had for the hydraulic, and then they put in a single spring system, and they would also change the camshaft, for the cam lobe would have a different profile. These, some little water in there, which is one of the reasons why we're taking this apart. And again, you'll see markings on these. I see it right there. So I'm putting everything aside as I take it off in the position that it was on the engine, but just setting it aside on the bench. This one's a little tougher to get to. Okay. Now we do the same with this set. You can hear the valves closing. I don't see any brazed eccentrics on this bank. Okay. Special washers again.
Text message from Tim Lefart.
And lift out that bank. That little ring was all the push rods. So in back. bit stuck down onto as a locating pin there. Now we can pull out the push rods. And in most cases the push rods are marked. So if you see on the end right there, you'll see a 13. I seem to remember maybe this being an earlier car, an A series. They went 1 to 24. I always thought that they did 1A and then 1B throughout. So there's 13. And again, I just like to check that they are how they're marked. And 15, that you can see the marks. 16. 17. 18. 19. 'Oh, I think I see a faint 20 on there. Definitely a 21. 22. 'I saw a faint 23. And that looks like a 24, definitely a 4. All right. So now we're ready to be able to loosen up the cylinder head nuts. Okay, so now we're doing the same process we did on the B bank, now on the A bank. So here we go again. It's like deja vu all over again. See what we find over on this side. Right. Usually just enough edge there to get a wiggle. Not quite loose. So we use our blunt chisel and gentle tap. walk it up and off. Oh, and there's one of the lock washers. So this one, the gasket came halfway with it and halfway not. Just peel the rest of it off. And this side also has this unusual foam felty stuff I've never seen before. So needs a little investigating to figure out what that is. Since this is the first Phantom 3 engine I've taken apart that had that in it. So I don't think that was a usual process.
A live recording of the oboe concerto of Jennifer Higdon. The oboe played by James Button.
And if I have a gasket kind of hanging like that, I like to get the rest of it all the way off. We'll start at the front just to make it easier to keep track. All right. And I'll just keep moving along undoing these nuts. So I have my ratchet here.
American Public Media, in collaboration with the American Composers Forum, reminding you that all music was once new.
.1 FM Philadelphia, 91.3 WRTQ Ocean City, Atlantic City, 90.7 WRTL Ephrata, Lebanon, Lancaster, 91.1 WRTY Jackson Township, Mount Pocono, 91.7 WJAZ Somerville.
And I'm looking at those, some of these eccentrics, and I don't see any that have been brazed.
Broadcast service of Temple University, also available in HD and on the WRTI app.
Good afternoon, I'm Kevin Gordon. 73 degrees in Philadelphia. How about that? Partly cloudy skies this evening and then mostly cloudy. A slight chance, very slight, of a shower after midnight. It'll be not as cool as in past evenings with lows of
And we'll lift up the rocker assembly.
Cloudy, a chance of showers in the morning.
And I'm looking and I see markings indicating that this is A side.
In Harrisburg,
front section.
75, Dover 72, Philadelphia 73 degrees. Let's waltz our way into this beautiful Thursday afternoon with music of Ante.
Okay, and I see the numbers indicating this is the A side for the rear section. Take the pedestals out. see there's two different types of pedestals. I also see some amount of rust right on that fellow, which is not helping things. The ones in the corners are always hard to get a hold of. I'll just show you the number here. Hopefully you can see that. A8. So if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A1. And we'll pull out the push rods. As we take them out, we just want to look and make sure the cups aren't broken. We'll just look at the numbering on them. I think I see a number 1. These have been marked 1 to 24. Number 2. And it's good to get a little assessment of this type of thing. Sometimes these cups break. See some gray sludge on there from the water that had gotten into the oil, which is the reason why we're doing this work. Camera a little bump. Okay. 9, 10, 11, 12. I also see that these are original type push rods. There's a conversion with rotating cam followers, barrel sliding type cam followers, and the push rod would have been modified to accept a different type tip rather than this type. So if you ever see a different one, that's why it is. All right, so now we're going to loosen up the cylinder head nuts. Again, I like to do this by hand and not machine.
Six in F, the Opus 54 of Antonin Dvorak on WRTI. The pianist was William Howard. Temple University, where trailblazing women have shaped the community for over 100 years.
Okay.
It's Women's History Month on WRTI. From Olympic fencer and pioneering coach Nikki Frank to the city's first poet laureate Sonia Sanchez and many more.
I'm looking at this one stud in here, and it's sticking up pretty high over the nut. So that might be an indicator of things to come. Maybe somebody just put a wrong stud in.
Exceptional radio has real costs.
Or maybe somebody has stretched it. We'll find out.
As a sustained member, your ongoing monthly contribution builds a strong foundation of support that WRTI can count on every month to keep the music on the air. Make an exceptional difference. Join or update your membership today at WRTI.org. 7 minutes after 2, and in 1821, actually between 1821 and 1823, Felix Mendelssohn wrote 13 string symphonies. Now, just saying the word is year, 1821 doesn't mean anything. But when I tell you he was 12 years old in 1821, then that means something. Here's the seventh of his string symphonies, the one in D minor, in a 2010 live recording of Damon Upton, Sweet Virtuosi, on WRTI.
See one in there, it looks like it's got a fair amount of rust on that. I should add that A and B heads are interchangeable. You'll notice this is the temperature sending unit location. So, and this is where it belongs. Now on the other head it's over here. So if you were to use this head on this side, then it'd spin around beyond that. Yeah, be a suck. But once they've been designated to an engine and they're stamped A and B, you really should keep them that way. But if you're in some sort of a fix, it doesn't have to be a specific A head or B head. It can be what you can get. Okay. Oh, use a magnet to get that one out. And that one too. Magnet. Two went down in here. One, two. Leave the magnet there. And again, you want to always double check and make sure you got them all, because one that's left on could ruin your day if you try to get it off with it in place. Looks like I've got them all. And these are also 5/16 British Standard with a 5/16 hex. So we'll start in the middle. Wow, they're a bit tight. Should say tighter than what I was expecting. And I like to definitely loosen these up by hand. That way you're less likely to break the stud. And in most cases, I take all the studs out, but there's times you get lucky and you find that they're perfectly fine the way they are and you can leave them in. And it also depends on what the work is that you're doing to the engine. So it looks like when they did the conversion, they left it with a single valve spring, but they left it with the outer spring in place and took out the inner spring. But of course, we'll find out more as we come apart. A lot of times when I just get to the end, I just run it all out. Okay. That's one I could use. You can see the rust on it. Or I'll put a little WD-40 on it. Probably that one too. All right. Once they're all loose, I feel comfortable using a driver. Put our colander down there to catch them. they're all loose, there's no need to go back and forth, and plus I want to let those others on the end soak a little bit. There aren't any hidden nuts. There's a couple that are down fairly deep. And there aren't any special ones. They're all the same. And there's a lot of them. You just want to be very careful you get them all. Because some of these deep ones, as I say, they can be tough to see. And if you have the nice original nut, it's a fairly deep nut, then by all means preserve them if they're in good shape. There's no rule that says they have to be replaced. That one needed a little lubricant. So is that one. We have all the nuts off. We should get all the washers next. These are also a special flat washer. They're a little thick and they're beveled. And this is an original. There's a few of them on here that aren't original. Sometimes a magnet works well. At least to help to get a fingernail underneath it. Okay. And remember, there's a lot of them, and you gotta do this twice. That's just the fun of Phantom 3 ownership. And I like getting all the washers off this way. Not only you can keep track of them, but also if you need to put some sort of releasing agent or lubricant down in there, it's going to seep down a little easier. If I haven't said it before, I'll say it again, that these cylinder heads can sometimes be quite stuck on their studs. The cylinder head being aluminum and the studs being steel have an effect of bimetal corrosion to each other. The aluminum oxide and the iron oxide sort of meld their ways together and expand whatever areas they expand into these smaller areas and fill in gaps, and can really put a binding effect on a lot of tight-fitting things. So it looks like I have all the washers. Now I'm just going to try and see if there's any chance of this cylinder head possibly wanting to come free. What did I do with my screwdriver? Oh, there it is. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you're not. Let's see what it's going to be. Well, I have movement. At least on that end. Okay. I think I have movement on this end as well, which is a plus. Not a whole lot to grip on. We'll go back to our front and do some wiggling there. And it's coming, which again is a very good sign. So I can figure out a way to get this side a little better. Probably stuck on those ones where the nuts were a little rusted. So I think what I'm going to do, introduce a little WD-40 around them. See if that helps things. And I might use a little propane heat in that area to see if that helps. I'm just going to allow that to soak in. And we'll get started on the other side while that soaks. So we'll get set up for that.
While on vacation in Wiesbaden, here is that symphony, his opus 90. The performers are the Oslo Philharmonic with Maris Janssens conducting on WRTI.
We're going to let that hang out and work on the other side. Block. Trying to run away on me. Okay. I think we might give these a little dose. WD-42. So slippery. The oily stuff.